Welcome to Ex Confessions Unlocked, where lies, betrayal, and truth collide. Kindly subscribe so you don't miss any of this. We share new stories daily. Stick around and unlock the drama. Now, let's get into today's story. He cheated, had a baby with another woman, and thought we could all be one big happy family. He had no idea who I was becoming without him. Hi. My name is Susan. I'm 33 years old. I teach writing at a small college, and I used to believe that if you worked hard and stayed loyal, things would work out. Life had a plan. You go to school, find someone good, fall in love, get married, and build a life. That's what I believed. That's how I thought my story would go. I married David when I was 27. He was funny, polite, and always knew what to say. He had this quiet confidence, and I liked how calm he made me feel. We met at a coffee shop after I accidentally spilled my drink on him. Instead of getting upset, he smiled and said, "Well, now we have to get coffee together." That was it. We clicked. We dated for 2 years before getting married. I was so sure about him. My friends said we looked good together. My parents loved him. And for a while, things were really good. We had small fights, sure, but nothing serious. He worked at a hospital, managing equipment in the imaging department. Long hours, but he seemed passionate about it. I understood. I tried to be supportive. The first few years of our marriage felt stable. We didn't have kids, yet. We were taking our time. We were saving up for a house. We'd talk about baby names sometimes while brushing our teeth. He liked the name Caleb. I liked Jonah. But it was all just talk. I never imagined those talks would end up meaning nothing. Things started to feel off last year. At first, it was small stuff. He started coming home late more often. He said work was getting busier. He would take calls in the other room. He changed his phone password without telling me. He used to leave his phone on the kitchen counter. Now it was always with him. Even in the bathroom. I asked him once, "Is everything okay between us?" He smiled like nothing was wrong and kissed my forehead. "Just work stuff," he said. But my gut kept nagging me. I knew something was wrong, even if I couldn't prove it. I brought it up again a few weeks later, but he said I was just being paranoid. He even got a little defensive, saying I didn't trust him enough. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe work really was that stressful. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I asked if he'd go to therapy with me, just to talk through some things. He didn't say no, but he didn't say yes either. It took almost 2 months before he finally agreed. One afternoon, we sat in the waiting room of a small office with neutral walls and soft lighting. I remember thinking how strange it was that we were there, how far we had drifted without even noticing. The therapist, a woman named Janet, asked us to talk about trust. I told her I was feeling disconnected, that something felt off. David just sat there quietly. Then Janet asked a direct question, "Have there been any betrayals in the relationship?" That's when David looked at me. He didn't speak, but something in his eyes changed. He looked scared. Or maybe guilty. I asked him for his phone password. Right there in the room. He paused, then gave it to me. Later that night, when he was asleep, I used it. That's how I found Clara. At first, I thought she was just a friend. Then I saw the texts. Hundreds of them. Photos. Voice messages. The way he wrote to her, soft, flirty, intimate. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. He told her things he didn't tell me. That's what hurt the most. He called her my light. Said things like, "You and Lucas are my world." Lucas? I kept scrolling. It was all there. She had a baby. His baby. She had sent pictures, newborn photos, videos of him laughing, sleeping. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a fling. This was another life. A secret one. I barely slept that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling while David slept in the same bed, his arm draped over me like everything was normal. I felt like I was in a bad dream. The next morning, I drove across town without telling him. I found the address she'd sent him in a message. It was a small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. I knocked. I wasn't sure what I was even going to say. But when the door opened, everything changed. She was younger than me. Maybe mid-20s. Long dark hair, tired eyes, holding a baby in her arms. She looked surprised. "You must be Susan," she said. I didn't even respond. My mouth was dry. She stepped aside. "He told me you knew." "I guess not." I walked in. Sat on the couch. She handed me a bottle of water. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. She introduced the baby, Lucas. She said David had been coming by every week. That he was helping with diapers and groceries. That he loved being a dad. She apologized. She said she didn't know he was married when they started. By the time she found out, she was already pregnant. She didn't look like she was lying. Just tired. Like me. I left after 20 minutes. I didn't argue with her. I didn't cry. I just nodded and walked out. I sat in my car for a long time before driving home. When I got back, I sent David a message. I saw your son. He replied in less than a minute, "Where are you? Please talk to me." When he walked through the door, he had 2 iced coffees in a cardboard tray, like peace offerings. His hands were shaking. He tried to hand me one, but I didn't take it. I asked him one question, why? He said he didn't mean to fall for her. That it started as stress relief, just talking. That she made him feel seen when I was distant. That he never planned for her to get pregnant. He said it like it was something that just happened to him, like rain. He said he still loved me. That I was his wife. That nothing had changed. I looked at him and said, everything has changed. Then came the part that truly broke me. He said he thought maybe we could all work it out. That I could meet Clara properly. That we could figure out a schedule. Holidays together. Maybe Lucas could grow up knowing me as well. A blended family, he said. It's not ideal, but we can try. I stared at him like he was speaking another language. He wanted me to stay married to him, accept his child with another woman, and just go on like this was normal? I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I didn't do either. I just told him to sleep in the guest room. That night, I lay in bed alone. I listened to the hum of the ceiling fan and thought about all the little moments we had shared. Our weekend hikes. Late-night drives. The way he used to bring home my favorite blueberry muffins. I thought about all of it, and how none of it meant what I thought it did. I didn't cry until the next morning. I made coffee like I always did, and as I reached for the sugar, my hand shook. I sat down and cried until I couldn't breathe. Not because I missed him, but because I realized I didn't know who I had been married to all this time. Something in me shifted that day. I wasn't sure what was next. I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to pretend this was okay. The next few days felt like living inside a glass bubble. Everything looked the same, my house, my job, my routines, but it all felt hollow. I kept going to work. I taught my classes. I smiled when I needed to. But inside, I felt like I was watching myself from far away. David tried to talk to me every night. He stayed in the guest room like I asked. He kept saying he wanted to explain more, that we could work through it. Sometimes he sat outside my door like a dog waiting for someone to come home. But I wasn't ready. I didn't want more words. I wanted silence. I needed space. One night, maybe 4 days after I met Clara and the baby, I sat in the kitchen with a notebook and wrote down one question: what do I want? It sat there at the top of the page for an hour before I wrote anything under it. Then I made 2 lists. One side was if I stay. The other was if I leave. If I stayed, I could maybe keep the life I'd built. The house. The plans. The idea of marriage. Maybe we'd go to therapy, and maybe I'd learn to trust him again. Maybe with time, I could love him in a different way. But then I imagined birthdays with Clara. School plays. Seeing him hold her hand when he thought no one was looking. And I knew I couldn't. On the if I leave side, there was just one line: I get to choose myself. I stared at those 5 words for a long time. The next morning, I told David I wanted a separation. He panicked. Said it didn't have to be this way. That we could take a vacation, talk things through, get away from all the noise. He said he'd cut off contact with Clara. He said he'd step back from the baby if that's what it takes. That last part made me feel sick. Step back from your own child? What kind of man says that? I told him no. I told him I wasn't interested in building a future on top of lies. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told him it was over, for now. I said I needed to live separately and think. Maybe I'd feel differently in time. But honestly, I already knew I wouldn't. He moved out that weekend. Packed a few bags, took his things, and left. I didn't ask where he was going, and he didn't say. I didn't care. The moment the front door closed, I sat down on the floor in the hallway and just breathed. It was quiet. Painfully quiet. But it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. A few days later, I got a message from Clara. It was short. I'm sorry again. I thought you deserved to know everything. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't reply right away. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk to her at all. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. How tired she looked. How alone she seemed. She was a part of this story now, whether I liked it or not. 3 days later, I messaged her back. We met at a small coffee shop near her place. I wore a hoodie and no makeup. I didn't want to look like I was trying. I just wanted to listen. Clara came in carrying Lucas in a little wrap. He was sleeping. She looked nervous. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice soft. "I don't even know what to say," I replied. She sat down and looked me in the eye. I swear, if I had known he was married, I never would've. I wouldn't have let it go that far. I believed her. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. She told me she met David at the hospital. She was shadowing a friend who worked in nursing. They bumped into each other in the hallway. Sound familiar? It was almost the same story as how he met me. Charming. Confident. Sweet. He helped her carry a box and asked for her number. He said he was single, she told me. He said he'd just gotten out of a long relationship and wasn't ready for anything serious. They started texting. Then seeing each other. A month later, she found out she was pregnant. That's when he told her the truth. He said he had a wife, she whispered. I almost threw him out. I should have. But I was scared. And alone. And he said he'd be there for the baby. I believed him. I sat there, looking at her. She wasn't the enemy. She was just another woman who had been lied to. Another person caught in his mess. And that baby, Lucas, he didn't ask for any of this. He was just an innocent life in the middle of all this betrayal. When I got home that evening, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. Not checking my face, but just looking. I tried to see what Clara had seen in David. What I had seen. And I realized something. David wasn't special. He was just good at pretending. The next few weeks were slow. Quiet. I took long walks. I called old friends I hadn't seen in years. I started going to a Saturday yoga class. I deleted old photos from my phone. I cooked dinner for one and ate it without feeling sad. David still messaged sometimes. Not too much. Just enough to keep the door open. He asked how I was doing. If I needed anything. Once, he said he missed the way I laughed at his dumb jokes. I ignored most of the messages. Then one day, he asked if we could talk. I agreed, but only at a public place. We met at a diner near my campus. He looked tired. His hair was messy, his shirt a little wrinkled. Not the polished version of David I used to know. I didn't feel angry. Just distant. He said he was sorry again. That he knew he'd messed up everything. That he was trying to be a better father now. That Clara was giving him another chance, for Lucas's sake. Then he said something that made me freeze. I still think you and I could figure this out. Maybe not now, but later. When things settle. You're still my wife. I looked at him for a long moment, then shook my head. No, David. I'm not. Not anymore. He leaned back like I'd slapped him. I spent so much time thinking I needed you, I said quietly. But I don't. I'm okay without you. Better, actually. He nodded slowly. I think that was the moment he realized it was really over. The next day, I started divorce paperwork. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling. No fights over who gets what. I kept the car. He kept his stuff. We didn't even own a house yet, thank God. Everything was done in a few weeks. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. Official. Signed. Divorce complete. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel grief. Just stillness. Like the dust had finally settled after a long storm. That night, I lit a candle, sat on the couch with a blanket, and watched a movie I used to love before I met David. I laughed at the jokes like I was laughing for the first time in years. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want to hurt him back. All I wanted was peace. And little by little, I was finding it. The weeks after the divorce felt strange. Not good, not bad, just different. Like walking in a familiar neighborhood but noticing things you never saw before. I was still living in the same apartment, still teaching at the same college, still going through the same daily routines. But something had shifted. Everything felt a little lighter. A little more real. One Saturday morning, I went to the farmer's market. It was something I hadn't done in over a year, something David never liked. He always said the crowds annoyed him. I used to skip it just to avoid a fight. But that morning, I went alone, and I took my time. I bought fresh flowers, a loaf of sourdough, and some local honey. The man who sold me the bread smiled and said, "Haven't seen you in a while." I smiled back and just said, I'm back. That became my new rule for life. No big plans. Just small steps forward. I didn't need to rebuild everything overnight. I just needed to choose myself again, one little thing at a time. Around the same time, I started hearing things about David and Clara. A mutual friend told me they were trying to co-parent officially. Apparently, David was making some effort now. He was paying child support and even posted a picture with Lucas once on social media. He wrote something like, "Becoming a dad changed my life." It made me roll my eyes. David always had a way of turning things into a performance. But I let it go. I wasn't following him anymore. I didn't want that energy in my life. Still, something inside me kept wondering, what kind of life was he building now? And more than that, what was he telling people about me? That question was answered one evening in the most unexpected way. I had just come back from yoga and was heating up leftovers when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara. "Hey, can I ask you something weird?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Sure." She replied right away. "Did David ever ask you to help raise another woman's baby with him?" I froze. My fingers hovered over the phone as I read it again. Slowly, carefully. I responded, "He wanted us to stay married after I found out about Lucas. Said we could all be one big family." A moment passed before she replied, "He's trying to say that was your idea. That you begged him to stay, and you even offered to raise the baby as your own." I stared at that message for a full minute. My whole body went cold. That was the final nail for me. Not the cheating. Not the lying. Not the betrayal. But the way he twisted the truth. Turned me into the desperate one. The liar. I felt a rage crawl up my spine, not loud or wild, but cold and focused. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. He didn't get to rewrite our story to make himself the victim. I called Clara. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was quiet. "I didn't believe him," she said. "Not really. But I needed to hear it from you." "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice even. "He's doing what he always does, making himself look like the good guy." "I thought he changed," she admitted. "After everything. But he hasn't. He's just hiding it better now." I could hear the tiredness in her voice. She was young, but motherhood had aged her quickly. Not in looks, but in weariness. "You're not stuck," I said softly. "You can still walk away." She was quiet. Then she whispered, "I don't know how." We talked for a while that night. About small things. About big things. It felt strange, connecting with her like that. But also honest. We were both women who'd been lied to by the same man. We weren't enemies. We were survivors of the same story. After that night, I didn't talk to Clara again. I think we both knew that was enough. We had said what needed to be said. There was nothing else to fix between us. A few weeks later, I saw David in public for the first time since the divorce. I was at a bookstore downtown, browsing through the fiction section, when I looked up and saw him walk in with Lucas in a stroller. He didn't see me. He looked distracted, maybe even annoyed. He was on his phone, barely paying attention to the baby. He stopped at the front desk to ask about a book. Lucas dropped a small toy, and David didn't even notice. I watched for a second, then stepped forward, picked it up, and handed it to the baby. He grabbed it with a little coo. That's when David looked up and saw me. His face froze. He put the phone down and opened his mouth to say something. But I just smiled, polite, distant, and turned away. I didn't owe him anything. As I walked out of the store, I felt something powerful. Closure. Not the loud kind. Not the kind where you scream or cry or finally say everything you held back. Just quiet understanding. He was who he was. And I had finally stopped hoping he'd change. That night, I journaled. I hadn't done that in a while. I wrote about seeing him. About Lucas. About how I didn't feel hurt or angry, just free. I also wrote something that surprised me. I think I'm ready to forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness isn't about saying what he did was okay. It's about not letting it live in my heart anymore. Since then, I've started building a new version of my life. I signed up for a weekend painting class. I planted herbs on my apartment balcony. I even booked a solo trip to the coast, a quiet little cabin where I could read, walk the beach, and be alone with my thoughts. Every day, I felt a little more like myself. Or maybe someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who didn't settle. And here's the thing, I don't regret marrying David. It taught me what I will never accept again. It taught me how to listen to my own voice. It gave me the push I needed to find myself again. That's not nothing. Some nights, I still think about the version of my life I thought I'd have, the house, the family, the shared future. But now I see it for what it was, an illusion. A story I told myself because I didn't want to be alone. But I'm not alone. Not really. I have myself. My peace. My clarity. And that's more than enough. The beach cabin I rented was small, but it was perfect. Just one room, a soft bed with white sheets, a little wooden table by the window, and a tiny kitchen. It stood close to the shore, and when I opened the windows, I could hear the waves moving in and out like slow breathing. I spent most of my time outside, walking barefoot in the sand, collecting shells, watching the sunset change the sky from gold to soft purple. I didn't check my phone much. I didn't scroll through social media. I didn't think about David or Clara, or even the old life I left behind. I just existed. And it felt so peaceful. Like I was finally coming back home to myself. One morning, I sat by the edge of the water with a cup of coffee in my hands. The wind was cool but soft, and the beach was empty. I watched the tide go out and thought about how long it had taken me to leave him. How many signs I ignored. How many nights I cried quietly so he wouldn't hear. I wasn't ashamed of that. I was just sad for the version of me who thought she had to accept it. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I stayed at the cabin for 4 days. I left with a clearer mind and a much quieter heart. When I got back home, life picked up again, but it didn't feel heavy. I was sleeping better, eating better, smiling more. People around me noticed, too. My friend Monica hugged me one afternoon and said, "You're glowing." I laughed. I think I just stopped carrying the wrong weight. That was true. I also noticed something strange started happening around that time. People from David's life slowly began drifting toward me. Not to gossip. Not to stir drama. Just, quietly reaching out. One was his cousin, Rachel. She and I had always gotten along. She messaged me out of the blue and said she missed me. We met up for coffee, and it felt like nothing had changed. "I don't really talk to David anymore," she said, stirring her drink. "He's been different. Distant. Always busy or short-tempered." I didn't say much. Just listened. She sighed and added, "I believed him, you know? When he told us you left because you didn't want to raise his son. That you couldn't handle being a stepmother. But now I think he was just trying to cover up what he did." I didn't get defensive. I just looked at her and said, "I left because he lied. Not because of the baby." She nodded slowly, guilt crossing her face. "I'm sorry for believing his version." "It's okay," I said softly. "I used to believe his version too." We hugged when we left the cafe, and I could tell it wasn't the last time we'd see each other. I didn't go around correcting people. I didn't post anything dramatic online. I just lived. And somehow, without even trying, the truth started making its way out. One quiet conversation at a time. About 2 months later, something unexpected happened. I got an email from a woman named Diane. She introduced herself as Clara's aunt. Said she had heard my name before and wanted to ask me something important. Her message said, "Clara left David. She and Lucas are staying with me for now. She's scared and confused, and I'm trying to support her. I think it would help her to talk to someone who understands. Would you be open to meeting?" I sat with that email for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. I had done my healing. I didn't want to get pulled back into David's world. I didn't owe Clara anything. But another part of me, the softer part, remembered our phone call. Remembered how broken her voice sounded. And how I once felt that exact same fear. So I said yes. We met at a park, in a quiet spot near the lake. Clara looked tired, really tired. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, and she wore no makeup. She held Lucas in her lap. He was a little older now, maybe 2 years old, and he had his father's eyes. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, gently bouncing Lucas on her knee. Finally, she looked up and said, "I should have left sooner." I nodded. "I know the feeling." She gave me a small, almost embarrassed smile. He was so charming in the beginning. So kind. I thought he was just misunderstood. "He's good at making people feel special," I said. "Until they stop agreeing with him." We talked for a long time that day. Not about revenge or pain, but about moving on. Letting go. Choosing ourselves. Before she left, Clara looked at me and said, "You're stronger than I ever was." I shook my head gently. "You're stronger than you think." That meeting didn't fix everything for her. I know that. But it gave her a little courage. A little hope. Sometimes, that's all we need. Not long after, I heard she'd found her own apartment and started working part-time again. She wasn't looking back, just forward. And I admired her for that. As for me, life continued to unfold in new and unexpected ways. I started seeing someone. It wasn't serious, not at first. His name was Mark. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party. He was gentle, thoughtful, never rushed anything. He asked questions and really listened. He didn't talk over me or make jokes at my expense. When I told him about my past, he didn't flinch or try to fix it. He just nodded and said, "Thank you for trusting me." It was strange, how easy it felt. How safe. One night, we were walking home after dinner, and he stopped me under a streetlight. "I know you've been hurt," he said. "But I want you to know, I'm not here to replace anything. I just want to build something new. Together. At your pace." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time in a long while, I felt open to the idea of love again. Not because I needed it, but because it felt like a choice, not a rescue. We held hands the rest of the way home. By then, it had been almost a year since David and I split. I didn't check on him anymore. I didn't need to. His life was no longer mine to carry. And one evening, as I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sky turn orange, I realized something powerful. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for karma or hoping he'd suffer or fail. I didn't need that. What he chose to do with his life was his problem. What I chose to do with mine, that was my victory. Peace doesn't come all at once. It's slow, quiet. It comes in small moments, in forgiveness, in laughter, in new beginnings. And I had built a life full of those moments. It was a cold morning in late October when I got a text from David. I hadn't heard from him in almost a year. I'd blocked his number long ago, but I guess he found another way to contact me. It was short. Just one line. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." I stared at it for a while. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I had nothing left to say. I had built a new life, a better one, and he wasn't a part of it anymore. But a small voice in my head whispered, "Maybe this is closure." So I replied, "One call. 10 minutes. That's all." He called almost immediately. His voice was quieter than I remembered. Slower. Like the words were heavy in his mouth. "Hey," he said. "Thank you for answering." I didn't say anything. "I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything," he continued, "but I wanted to apologize. I've been thinking a lot lately. About what I did to you. To Clara. To the people who trusted me." I still said nothing. Not because I was angry, but because I was waiting. Waiting to see if he would actually say the truth without twisting it into something soft and easy. He sighed. "I ruined something good. And I blamed you when you walked away, but you were right. You were always right." That made my chest tighten a little. Not because I needed to hear it, but because, at one time, I really did. "I treated you like a backup plan," he said. "And I see now how wrong that was. I'm sorry, Susan. For everything." I finally spoke. "It took you long enough." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, I guess it did." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for more details. There was nothing left I needed from him. I had already healed without his help. Before he hung up, he said something I didn't expect. "I heard you're doing well. People talk. I'm glad." That's when I knew I'd really moved on, because I didn't feel anything but peace. After we ended the call, I sat on my couch and looked around my living room. It was warm, cozy, filled with little things that made me happy. A candle flickered on the shelf. My favorite book lay open on the coffee table. A photo of me and Mark, smiling under a tree, leaned against a plant pot. This was my life now. And I loved it. Mark and I weren't rushing anything. We were just living. He supported me in quiet ways, leaving notes on the fridge, cooking dinner when I had long days, sitting beside me when I didn't want to talk. One night, I told him the full story about David. Every painful detail. When I was finished, I waited for him to react. He didn't judge me. He didn't ask why I stayed so long. He just pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You're not broken. You're just real." I cried that night. But not because I was sad. I cried because someone saw me, not as a victim, not as a burden, but as a person who survived. It was a beautiful feeling. Over the next few months, more good things started to happen. I got promoted at work. I finally signed up for the painting class I always talked about. I even took a solo trip to Italy, something I used to only dream about. I walked through little villages, tasted new food, and sat by myself in quiet churches, just breathing. And one evening, as I watched the sun set over a vineyard, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need David to hurt the way I did. I didn't need Clara to suffer, or for the people who believed lies to come crawling back with apologies. Life had already taken care of that. I had become everything I needed, on my own. That was the real victory. Clara and I still talk sometimes. Not often, but enough. She's doing better. Lucas is growing up fast. She says he loves animals and dances every time he hears music. He's got your kindness, she told me once. Even if he doesn't know it came from you. That made me smile. I didn't hold any hate toward her. I had let that go too. Hate weighs you down. It keeps you tied to people who don't deserve space in your heart. And I had learned, through pain, through healing, that sometimes the best revenge is simply no longer needing any. One afternoon, as I walked through a park near my house, I saw a little girl chasing bubbles, laughing as they floated in the wind. Her parents stood nearby, smiling and clapping. I thought about what my life might have looked like if David had never cheated. If I had stayed. If I had tried to make it work, for the sake of appearances. But then I looked at the girl again. She was happy, free, full of light. And I realized, so was I. I may not have the family I once pictured. But I have peace. I have freedom. I have love, the quiet, steady kind that stays even when the storms come. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Sometimes people ask me if I regret anything. I always say no. Because every wrong turn, every heartbreak, every hard choice brought me here, to this version of myself. Stronger. Softer. Wiser. I survived the kind of pain that could have broken me. But instead, I rebuilt. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But honestly. Fully. And now, when I think of David, I don't feel bitterness. I feel gratitude. He showed me who I never want to be. He pushed me to find a life far better than the one I was trying to fix. I never needed to be part of his perfect family. I just needed to come home to myself. And I did.